شيخ تفضل هذا.
لا بأس، بارك الله فيك، جزاك الله خير. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن سار على سبيله إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. So in continuing with Tafseer of Surah Al-Baqarah, we reach ayah 234, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والذين يتوفون منكم ويذرون أزواجا يتربصن بأنفسهن 4 أشهر وعشرا فإذا بلغن أجلهن فلا جناح عليكم فيما فعلن في أنفسهن بالمعروف والله بما تعملون خبير. So what's mentioned here, and those who are taken in death among you and leave wives behind, the wives shall wait for 4 months and 10 days. And when they have fulfilled their term, then there's no blame upon you for what they do with themselves in an acceptable manner, and Allah is fully aware of what you do. So here it mentions the iddah period for the wife who is widowed. Was her waiting period. It is for 4 months and 10 days. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions ahkam in this regard also, where He mentions يتربصن بأنفسهن يعني ينتظرن حتى انقضاء عدتهن وهي 4 أشهر و10 ليال. So what's mentioned during this time for the woman who's a widow, she's not to be out in the evening and night time, she's not to leave her home, she's not to put on perfume and the likes, even within her household. She's to leave off all of these actions, nor is she to beautify herself. Her mourning period, she's not supposed to beautify herself, wear of perfume, or leave in the evening time to make herself apparent and accessible. However, once that time has passed, that's what I mentioned when it says وَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فَإِذَا بَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِيمَا فَعَلْنَ فِي أَنفُسِهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. That which they do among themselves with goodness, in terms of, in a way that is permitted, of wearing perfume in their house, beautifying themselves at home now, but they can leave their house and be known among the people in terms of if someone wanted to present themselves for marriage. But as for during the 4 months and 10 days, that is to be avoided. However, of the things that is permitted during that time, is what is called ta'arid lizawaj. That a person may say or give an inclination that they may be interested in marrying this person after their waiting period has come to the end. So they can say something like, إني راغب في الزواج. I would like to get married. But you can't say directly to this person, I want to marry you. But you can say something that is indirect. I'm interested in marriage, I would like to get married. Or if you, for example, say when your waiting period comes to an end and you're looking for marriage, then you can consult me. Something like this, to give an indication of interest. But as for saying it outright, then this is not permitted. To be direct to the sister who's in a waiting period, this is not permitted. The same applies for the woman who's been divorced, and it's the divorce that they cannot return back from, the third talqa, the third divorce. You can also indicate, but you cannot directly state to them. However, when it comes to the divorce that is raj'i, the husband can take back his wife, it's not permitted to say it directly, in tasrihan wala ta'lidan, nor can you give an indication of interest. That is not permissible. Now, it's permissible in situations where she's a widow or she's been given the third divorce and it's not possible for her to return back to her ex-husband. In those situations, it's permitted to do what is called ta'reel, where you give an indication of interest that's not direct. That's saying something like, I'm looking for marriage, or when your waiting period comes to an end and you're looking for marriage, then you can consult me, something like this. But as for saying, I would like to marry you, or I would like you for marriage, then statements like this that are sarih, that are direct, and this is not permitted to be done. Also, of the things that is to be understood, the waiting period, the mourning period for the widow is 4 months and 10 days. As for any other women, he's not your husband. Anyone who dies from your family, you're only allowed to mourn for 3 days. To mourn for longer than this is not permitted. Mourning longer than this is not permitted. But as for only for the woman who has lost her husband, then she can for 3 days. And that's based on the hadith al-sahih, لا يحل لامرأة تؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر أن تحد على ميت فوق 3 ليال إلا على زوج 4 أشهر وعشرة. So it's not permitted for a woman to mourn in that fashion who believes in Allah on the last day for more than, upon someone who's deceased for more than 3 days or 3 nights, except for a husband. Then they mourn for 4 months and 10 days. No. And ihdad was mentioned in al-ihdad, which is the mourning. هو ترك أنواع الزينة حتى الكحل والخضاب وعليها لزوم البيت ليلا وعدم التعرض للخطاب. It mentions that the manners of mourning for the woman is that she leaves off all forms of beautification. Even putting kuhl in the eye, this is also to be avoided. And she's not allowed to come out of her house at night time. She's to stay at home during the night, the evening time, so she doesn't make herself look or available to be courted for marriage. But once that time comes to an end, she can put kuhl in her eye, she can leave her house. However, that is once that waiting period has come to an end. But someone, for example, could give an indication that they would be interested, but without saying it directly. So that is rulings regarding the woman who her husband has died. And what's mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it evident the rahmah of His sharia. Allah knows what's within mankind. If someone knows of a person who is a good sister, she's a widow, someone may desire to want to marry her because of her goodness. So Allah knows that this is the situation of mankind. So rather than place hardship upon them by making it completely haram, mention it's permissible to give an indication, to make it known somehow that is a potential interest. Now, because what we find today, it's not for us that when a person dies that they should stay single for the rest of their life. That's not the way of the sunnah. What you find, there are those from the Salaf, when they passed away, for example, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when his daughter passed away, that was married to who? Uthman ibn Affan. What did he do? He married him to the second daughter. He didn't say, no, okay, just stay single. That's it, you had a good wife. Never get married again. Obviously, if a person has no desire for marriage, no problem. But a person shouldn't become fixated in their mind that they will never get married again. You see. Because لَعَلَّ فِيهِ خَيْرٌ. Whatever Allah decrees for you in your life, then is good. Whether we know it and can see it or not. Now, so what's mentioned regarding the wife that's mourning, it's not even just to leave home at the house at night time. She's only meant to leave home for a need. She doesn't have a desperate need to leave the house. She's not supposed to leave the house. Also, of the things that's prohibited is because what happens, a person, let's say there's a widow and you directly say to her you want to get married, she may not even observe her iddah period. Because she might say, if you didn't know, if it wasn't easy to find out, she'd say my iddah period's finished, for example. Or if you didn't know who her ex-husband was, or who her, widowed husband was, who died upon her, you wouldn't know, maybe. So you can easily say, no, it's finished, because they just want to get married. If a person was known for wealth or good religion and the like, these things occur. So again, that prohibition also prevents people from transgressing, and that's why Allah also mentions, Wallahu bima ta'maluna khabir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, informing mankind, that Allah with all that you do is all-knowing. So when a person knows Allah is all-knowing of that which they do, they tread carefully. And you think people don't know, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. And there's going to come a time where you shall be reminded and informed of that which you used to do. I must mention the word junah, where it says وَلَا لَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ. الجناح بمعنى الإثم المترتب على المعصية. It's the sin that comes with an act of disobedience. It's the bearing of sin for an act of disobedience. And of the thing that's also mentioned, يعني وجوب مراقبة الله تعالى في السر والعلم واتقاء الأسباب المفضية بالعبد إلى فعل الحرام. It mentions a person is to always observe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in secret and in open, and also to safeguard himself from the means that will lead a person to doing something that is haram. One should always avoid the things that will lead a person to doing that which is haram. Now, the discussion of what is mentioned regarding the permissibility of indirectly approaching the sister, where it says وَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي مَا عَرَّضْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْ خِطْبَةِ النِّسَاءِ أَوْ أَكْنَنْتُمْ فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ عَلِمَ اللَّهُ أَنَّكُمْ سَتَذْكُرُونَهُنَّ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُوَاعِدُوهُنَّ سِرًّا إِلَّا أَنْ تَقُولُوا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا وَلَا تَعْزِمُوا عُقْدَةَ النِّكَاحِ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْكِتَابُ أَجَلَهُ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ فَاحْذَرُوهُ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ حَلِيمٌ. So again it mentions as well ولا تعزم عقدة النكاح حتى يبلغ الكتاب أجله. يعني لا تعقد النكاح, don't take the marriage contract حتى يبلغ الكتاب أجله, until the fulfilled appointed time has come to an end. المدة المكتوبة, that waiting period that Allah has legislated. Nothing is allowed to be done prior to this time. Now, also, as we mentioned, for Allah Musta'an, we've heard situations when, for example, a sister's been divorced and she's in a waiting period, and it's 3 months obviously, but then she's already started talking to someone else. And it's a divorce where the husband has the right to take them back. Now they start talking to someone else, the husband finds out, he's not going to take her back. And sometimes it's even worse than that. Sometimes they end up in haram relationships. Because the likeliness of you finding someone good who's going to talk to you during your waiting period is a reflection of that person's character also. And also one should not deceive themselves as if they're safe, because at the same time you may put yourself in harm's way. The person may have good intention. The person finds out, okay, in the period and the likes, then one should stay back. One should withhold themselves. Because the reality is, the better situation that they rectify their affairs. But again, if you are a means to cause them to split, then that's also something that is not permitted. Now, also the next ayah Allah mentions لا جناح عليكم إن طلقتم النساء ما لم تمسوهن أو تفرضوا لهن فريضة ومتعوهن على الموسع قدره وعلى المقتر قدره متاعا بالمعروف حقا على المحسنين وإن طلقتموهن من قبل أن تمسوهن وقد فرضتم لهن فريضة فنصف ما فرضتم إلا أن يعفون أو يعفو الذي بيده عقدة النكاح وأن تعفوا أقرب للتقوى ولا تنسوا الفضل بينكم إن الله بما تعملون بصير. Then it mentions there's no blame upon you for that which you do, which you indirectly there's no blame upon you if you divorce women who you have not touched. I.e., there was no consummation. The marriage was not consummated. Nor specified for them a mahar. But give them of a gift of compensation, the wealthy according to his capability and the poor according to his capability. A provision according to what is acceptable, a duty upon the doers of good, i.e. the good doers. And if you divorce them before you have touched them and you have already specified for them an obligation, and give half of what you have specified unless they forego the right or the one in whose hand is the marriage contract forgoes it. And to forego it is nearer to righteousness, and do not forget graciousness or the goodness between you. Indeed Allah of what you do is seen. Now here within this ayah is a number of benefits. For example, a person may get married to someone prior to consummating the marriage, having marital relations, they realize they don't want to stay with this person. They don't want to stay with this person. So they choose to divorce. It's better that you divorce prior to consummating the marriage. Because if a person knows they're going to divorce but they still consummate anyway, that means they're taking advantage now. And they know that they're definitely going to divorce this person. This is playing games. And so the person doesn't fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if a person knows, for example, maybe you married them and then you realize something that you really didn't like, that was something you couldn't bear patience upon, you said, you know what, this is not for me. And you get divorced prior to consummation. Now, if a person is asking, what if you done other than consummation? Here, it mentions consummation. Now, that you haven't done the act of consummation. So other than that, then wallahu a'lam. But that's what it mentions here. So that's what we mentioned. Yeah, that's what's mentioned here. So the rules are based on that what is mentioned. So there are cases where a person doesn't specify a gift as well, the mahar. They're going to give something, but they haven't specified what it is exactly. Now, in situations like that, the person who has wealth should give something according to his ability, and the person who is not so wealthy, the person who their situation is a bit tight, they should also give from that which they have the ability to do. But if it's a situation where a person has mentioned the mahar, then they have to give half of the mahar. Often what happens, a person gets divorced and maybe the mahar was umrah, and obviously they're not going to take that person umrah anymore. So what do they do in that situation? They pay the value of how much it would cost to perform, of how much it would have paid to go on the trip of umrah. They pay that value. Now, when it talks about those who are divorced, they mention there's a number of situations. From them, the one who is divorced and they haven't consummated the marriage, and the mahar wasn't mentioned, this person should give something and there's no idda period for her. There's no waiting period for her. The second is the one who was divorced and the marriage was not consummated, but the mahar was mentioned. Then they give half of the mahar unless they are excused from doing so. Unless the person says, don't worry about it. Or the wali says, don't worry about it. The third situation the one who was divorced after consummation, the mahar is for her. The mahar is hers, وَعَلَيْهَا الْعِدَّةِ, and she has to do the waiting period of either 3 months or 3 menstrual cycles, or if she's pregnant until the baby is born. The fourth situation is someone who is divorced after consummation but the mahar was not specified. Then for her is what would be the norm. Now, what would be the norm? They would give what is considered to be a customary norm for a woman like her. They would give her that equivalent as a mahar. Now, Islam looks at all of these matters. As we mentioned before about the one who is divorced, widowed, the scholars also mentioned the difference of opinion, but some mention that. Plug it here. That one who is widowed but she's pregnant, they say that she has to wait till she gives birth. Not only the 4 months and 10 days, it's whichever one is longer. So for example, because she may give birth in less than 4 months and 10 days. If it's less than 4 months and 10 days she gives birth, she has to wait 4 months and 10 days. If it's longer time of her giving birth, longer than the 4 months and 10 days, she waits until she gives birth. Wallahu a'lam. That's all the things that are mentioned. You see. But obviously if a person finds himself in that situation, upon them is to consult Ahlul Ilm, a person of knowledge, that they deal with their situation in the best manner. Of the things that's also mentioned, after the rulings of any, then you give half, if you already mentioned the mahar and the likes, and you haven't considered, then you give half. After this, Allah mentions, وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Now, of the things that often occurs when people get divorced, the sour personalities come out and they start to speak bad about each other, try to defame each other's character and the likes within the community. This is all prohibited. One should not do this. Allah says, وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Don't forget the goodness, the good times that you had. Because if in many circumstances when people have been married, it wasn't always all bad. There's been bad situations, yes, and sometimes those bad situations continued for a while, which made you say, you know what, we just need to go our separate ways. However, as we mentioned before, the command of going separate ways is to be done upon goodness. But also, once you do go your separate ways, still maintain goodness. Sometimes people behave bitterly. Now, sometimes the situations come to me and I just advise someone, look, if the other party is going on in a way that's not pleasing to Allah, don't follow them. Be patient upon that. It's going to be harmful and difficult at times, but you just maintain your duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If one party is not listening, don't be the other party that's just going to join them and not listen. Leave them to it. If someone wants to be bitter and make your life difficult, just seek your refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't waste your time with bitter character at all. For example, sometimes the communication is sour, they call, it's rude, their message is rude. Don't even contact them unless there's a need. And usually the need is only going to be if you have what? Children. You have children in between you. If you're not able to come to common ground, we're able to have a healthy discussion as co-parents, then you may need to get an intermediary involved. Someone who's a mediator between you because whether it's a family member or someone who is external. But one thing, don't follow the same pattern of someone's behavior. Wallahu a'lam, but from my own experience and observation of other people's experience, people who are bitter, if you don't fall into the bitterness, they get bored of being bitter. People that deal with you in a certain way, people, and this is whether it's women or brothers, anyone who deals with you in a bitter fashion, an ill fashion, don't give in to them. Don't give them back the same treatment. Ignore them. Don't even give them time of day. Eventually, they will be bored of being bitter. For example, you see the brother that doesn't want to give you salam, doesn't return your salam, just ignore them. Don't acknowledge them. Don't allow them to have any impact on you. Because the moment you do this, they have to make a choice. Okay, I don't want to give this guy salam, it's not working. Eventually they might say, do you know, salam alaikum. They might even apologize. They may even apologize. You see? But as for the one who wants to behave in these manners, then khalas, we leave them to it. That's their own situation. But those who know better, they should always do better. إِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. And when the people of ignorance speak to them in an ill manner, they only say words of peace, i.e. words that will not be fuel to make things worse. So, again, when he says وَلَا تَنْسَوْا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ, it doesn't mean go and sit back and reminisce and think about all the good times you had. It means when you're dealing with each other still, don't forget that there was times that were good. It wasn't always bad, so still deal with each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a way that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this is important, because you've got situations where the mom prevents the father from seeing the child. This is not good for the child. Forget your personal differences. The rights of the child are being neglected. Or you find the father doesn't want nothing to do with his children. Doesn't want nothing, or he makes their life difficult. You see, or some, they get divorced and my wife, my ex-wife will never get married again in the community, and they make threats to people and the likes. These brothers, they're supposed to be dealt with. Brothers like this, the community comes together and we deal with brothers like that. Brothers who try to act like they own their ex-wives and the likes, they should be dealt with in a way that is befitting. Because she doesn't belong to you, you see. And the sister should feel safe that there's brothers or communities that will safeguard them from the likes of these people. Because she's not a commodity, a person buys and sells. La. If she's no longer your wife, khalas, that's the end of it. You have nothing to do with her, you don't own her. And what you'll find in situations where people will get divorced and someone to get married, the one who first starts speaking ill about the person is usually the one who is the one that's been doing wrong. When he first opens their mouth and starts saying, yeah, but you know, my ex was like this, they were like this, they were like this. Usually that's the first person that's the one you actually have to worry about. You see, that's the one who is, in most cases, because again, لا تنسوا الفضل بينكم. Don't forget the good times you had with you. And if you don't have anything good to say, then be quiet. You see, sisters going online, for example, talking about their narcissist husbands, ex-husbands and the likes. Why don't you say, Alhamdulillah, you're no longer with them? Don't you realize the divorce or the khul'a that you got was your rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah freed you from your situation. Why are you still reliving it for? You see, the gratitude is the fact that you are no longer married to that person who you consider to be a tyrant, a narcissist, an oppressor, and the likes. Alhamdulillah, move on with your life now. You see? But the problem is, you'll find, as I mentioned it many times, and it's a sad reality, someone is now married they have a whole new marriage, but online, their claim to fame is still talking about their ex-relationships. And me personally, as a man, I would never stay with a woman like this. And that's just me as a man. I would never stay with a sister in marriage who goes online talking about her ex-husband. After the school runs, let's go live on TikTok. I'm going to talk about the narcissism of my ex-husband. But you're married now. You're married now. You see? And this is the problem. You see? So that's my personal advice when it comes to these matters. And I also advise brothers who are in situations. And why do you mention, we specifically mention brothers because it's very rare until someone can show me when you find brothers preventing the mother from seeing their children. I'm talking about the mothers who prevent the fathers from seeing their children. They are doing so much damage they don't realize. Damage to the children, damage to the father at times, unless he's strong-minded, and damage to themselves. The damage for themselves, they haven't even seen it coming yet. But the moment they realize, the child realizes the father wanted to be a part of their life, then the mother will suffer the consequences. But again, when you find your children raised with an emotional imbalance, emotional instability, and the likes, because you've removed the father factor from their life. And sometimes, I mentioned to one of my neighbors today, he said to me he's got a child, not getting to see the child. I said, bro, don't even stress about it. Bro, don't stress about it. You know, we'll talk soon. Why? Because, and I said to him, look, there's people that we know, common people that we know. They've lost their mental faculties. They're mentally unwell now because of the depression, the stress of not being able to have access to their children. What happens in that situation? Even if they want to be a father to the child, they're not able to now. Why? Because they no longer have the mental capacity. You see? This is a very sad reality. Because sometimes you see crackheads and alcoholics that you see outside. Don't be surprised if when you actually speak to them and say, why are you doing this? You say, I lost contact with my children when they were young. It messed me up. I couldn't handle it. I took to the drugs. I took to the alcohol. So can that person ever be a good father now? Not until they rectify their situation. But sometimes the mother is to blame for allowing the father to go down that road. Yeah. Because as I always say, okay, no matter what you've gone through, the fact you're no longer in that situation, you should say Alhamdulillah. If you was oppressed, yeah, okay, cool. That's between you and the father. Yawm al-Qiyamah, you can settle that. But as for the sake of the children, don't prevent the father from having a relationship with the child unless, not based on speculation, unless there's clear indication the father is a harm to the child. If it's not the case, allow them to have a relationship with the father. As I mentioned, it's an embarrassment that as Muslims, we have to go to court just for the father. What's the father going to court for? What's he going to get a judgment based on? To see his child. Yeah. Really having to go all that way for the father? There's some people, as a common term we say, they don't even fart on their children. We know this term slang, don't fart on their children. They don't give two monkeys. They don't care at all. They have so much children, they don't care. It's nothing. That's not my problem. I don't see much. They don't care. They literally don't care. They won't be involved in their child's life, and that's the choice they make. But when you have a father who wants to be involved in a child's life, it doesn't mean you have to have a relationship. It doesn't mean you have to be friends. There's so many means to facilitate that contact in this day and age. So many means. But again, as I mentioned, it comes from us following the guidelines within the Quran and the Sunnah. Putting our emotions aside. Putting our emotions aside. Because when we start to judge matters by emotion, Allahu Musta'an. Allahu Musta'an. That's the reality. When we start to put emotion at the forefront of judgment, the judgment becomes clouded.
Sheikh, someone can keep emotions for years and years?
Keep emotions for years and years?
Years and years.
Yeah, that's because that person themselves has made that choice.
Oh.
You see? Because no matter whatever you go through, the harm of it emotionally is only bad in the beginning. Allah has not created us in a way that we hurt the same forever. It doesn't work like that. You see? And we also have means to remove harm or sorrow and grief. We have the means. But people make a choice. People choose. People choose to be a certain way. For example, my younger brother passed away. Maybe 11 years now. From that time, my father said he's never going to be happy again. That's a choice. Why is it that when someone dies, people make a choice to die as well? To die while still living. That's their choice. You see. But Islam gives us guidelines. Islam teaches us death, the concept of death. So the Muslim knows, expects it at some point. But at the same time, whenever death comes, it's a shock. That's the reality. But it doesn't mean that when someone dies, I no longer live. Alhamdulillah, when your family die upon Islam, the situation is better for you. Because you can still do charity on their behalf, you can still make dua for them, you can visit their grave. You see? Maybe it's a harder concept when someone dies upon other than Islam. But what rectifies that? For you knowledge. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he was asked about his parents, he said, they're in the hellfire. One person came while he was giving a khutbah and said, Aina Abi? Aina Abi? Aina Abi? He kept saying it whilst the person was doing the khutbah. He said, Finnar. He said, in the hellfire. Obviously, the person who's come to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, was he not in a state, emotional state already? Okay, how did the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ console him? Wa ummi wa abi finnar. My mother and father in the hellfire. You see, this is a reality. We have to stop living in a dream and not expect people close to us to die. It's either going to be them or us. It's just a matter of time. You see, but we have to prepare for it. You find so many people, their child dies, say, why is my child dying before me? That's who told you that's the system? Who told you that's how it's supposed to be? Allah never ever said children will die after their parents. Show me where Allah said this.
Almost all of them died before him.
All of the Prophet Muhammad's children died before him except for one. And she died 6 months after him. You see? And what did the Prophet Muhammad, when Ibrahim a.s. passed away, what did he say? Inna bi faraqika ya Ibrahim la mahzunin. Wa la naqulu illa ma nurdillah. Indeed, we are with your disparting, Ya Ibrahim, we are saddened. His son's passed away, of course we're grieving, we're saddened. However, we don't say anything except for that which is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam makes us strong. Islam teaches us not to behave based upon emotion. The strongest person is those who control themselves emotionally. Because it's so easy to lose yourself completely when you allow yourself to be controlled by emotion. For example, a person can never judge whilst he is angry. Imagine you're angry and you've got a case. Do you know how much cases I have to look at? I'm thinking, I'm so angry, I'm upset with the situation. I can't even talk right now. Why? Because I'm just going to say, forget it. This is what it is. Because what happens when you're angry from something now, you cannot give a sound judgment. You can't give a sound judgment. You see? But the person who holds themselves together, they're able to look over matters. This person, this is a real strong person. This is the truly strong person. That's why if someone's known to be an emotional individual, they should never be in a place of leadership. Emotional individuals should never be in a place of what? Leadership. You see? And that's why the person taught us women are not to be in places of what? Leadership. It's not sexism at all. It's the one who created us knows the nature he's created us upon. And that's the reality. Women in general from their creation are more emotional than men. And that's why you find often the arguments that women have with their husbands is, he doesn't talk to me. He doesn't express himself. Because that's not man's nature. Many men, they conceal their emotions. They just handle it and deal with it. Women is the opposite. They want to express. They feel the need to express. This is not a criticism. This is an acknowledgement of the nature Allah has created us upon. But when they hear it, they will get emotional and what? Criticize. You see? Because as soon as we say this, what we call trigger words, as soon as they're said, emotions come, they rise. Immediately. Islam teaches us control those emotions. Now, that's why the true strong person is not the one who can overcome people in wrestling, ولكن on يحبس نفسه عند الغضب, the one who can hold back themselves in times of anger. Do you think this is something you can just do straight away? Someone comes and punches you, someone comes and annoys you, someone's a tyrant towards you, you can just automatically say, Alhamdulillah, Allah said, hold back the anger and smile. No, this is something you have to train yourself. You have to condition yourself to be this way. You also have to seek Allah's assistance to be this way. You see? But again, Islam teaches us not to be of those who make decisions based on emotions. For example, two young people, they fall in love with each other. They've been talking in a way that's not permissible. And then the father says, you're not allowed to marry the daughter. What happens? He can never accept this. He's going to lose his mind. No, I have to marry her. I love her. She's going to say the same thing. I have to marry him. I love him. But you know, if they thought about it, the situation, putting emotions aside, they may realize they're not even good for each other. They're not even compatible. How did they develop this blind love? Because their messages. It's like a CV. It's so easy on WhatsApp to say everything that you're going to like, and you to say everything he's going to like. So what do you love? You love a text messaging character. You don't know how it's going to be. You see? But if it's good for you, Allah's going to facilitate it for you. But you have to do it the what? The right way. The right way. And this jealousy can be a very dangerous disease. One of the Sahaba came to Ibn Abbas and he mentioned, I loved a woman, I sought marriage from her and she refused. I proposed and she refused. Someone else came and she accepted, so I killed her. That's the reality. That's how serious. I become so jealous of her, I killed her. Imagine, that's where emotion can take you. So he was seeking advice. How does he make tawbah? How does he seek forgiveness? And he asked him, is your mum still alive? Is your mother still alive? He said, La. And he told him, do as much things to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seek forgiveness from Allah sincerely. But again, the shahid of the hadith, the emotion that people carry in the heart, it can blind them. They're not able to see clearly. So all judgment is made based on how they're feeling. And the issue is, when I make a judgment based on my feeling, as soon as I calm down again, I may not have the same opinion. I may not feel the same way about the situation. You see, it's like a father hears that his daughter talking to someone without his permission. She comes saying, I want to marry this person. The first thing he says is, what, how dare you? Angry. If he just holds himself back, stays calm, doesn't say anything, he may handle the situation in a different way as soon as he becomes what? Calm. He might say, you know, okay, let me meet this brother. Then he can go through the process and then he can say, I have a justified reason to say to my daughter, no. Because he may be upset about the reality of them talking, but then he may discover this person is actually what? Good for his daughter. And in the West that we live in, the situation we live in now, is very likely in their school, in their university, in their workplace, some form of conversation is going to what? Happen. But in the moment of emotion, I become totally blind to this. I'm not able to see it. at all. So one has to become calm. Just like when the Prophet Muhammad first received revelation and he went back to Khadija radiallahu anha, did she ask him any questions? La. He said, Zammiluni, Zammiluni. He was in a state of fright and shock. She didn't ask him anything until he was ready to talk. Because then the emotions have what? Have settled, have calmed down. That's the lessons that we have to learn. Don't let emotions get the better of you. It's very easy. And that's why in times of anger, if you're going to hold anything back, let it be the tongue first. Because the harm of the hand comes following. Hold back the tongue. Remove yourself from the situation. Ta'awwad, seek and ista'idh billah. Seek refuge from the accursed shaitan that's waiting for these moments to whisper, to come to you, to make you act immoral in those times. ونكتفي بهذا القدر المصلي وسلم على نبينا وحبيب محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.